It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. For those of you who are just joining me, that you are coming in at an amazing opportune time. For those who've been following for a while, I hope you're having a blast with this. We're in the beginnings of a series on women leaders in technology. If you want to know a little bit more about why this series was important to me, go back to that very first episode why I introduced it. It is always, I have so much fun when I do series and I have an opportunity to meet great leaders who are doing things in a specific field. And each one is a little different, which gives us an amazing opportunity to learn. Today's guest is Jessie Young. Jessie is a commercial leader with deep experience scaling B2C business to their first major expansion. She is passionate about tech-enabled marketplaces that drive shared value for the communities they operate in and serve. An early Uber employee, yes, I did say Uber. She is currently the global lead of New York verticals, launching and scaling grocery, alcohol, restricted items, and retail business. Her previous professional experience spans strategic finance, management consulting, and law. She's an amazing woman to have a conversation with. You can find more of her bio in the show notes below because Jessie is just amazing, fun, informative. Most importantly, you're going to say, oh, where did that accent come from? Jessie, it's good to meet you. And thanks for coming in from Colorado today as we sit and talk, as the world brings us closer all the time.
G'day, Ivy. I feel like I have to make the disclaimer about who I truly am, although I am sitting in Colorado today as we speak, and operating from the New York office. I am, in fact, unavoidably Australian. So nice to be with you.
And listeners, if you didn't get that on that g'day, that I did not say very well. Thank you so much. Share a little bit, as we get started, you have an incredibly eclectic background. Mm-hmm. And I don't always want to hear so much about people's backstory, but I think a lot of your background and backstory have really led to you making a difference in an industry globally today. So I'd love to touch base on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think with the benefit of hindsight, you can string together a beautiful, cogent narrative based on exactly where you thought some of your experiences and your competencies would lead you. Instead, I've been very lucky that the sum of my passions and my insatiable curiosity has led to an employment outcome, to be quite honest. I think I have always taken the view that if you are following your passion and you are sitting somewhere between the edge of what you are really great at and what you really enjoy, you will always be successful. And I am an insatiably curious person, so what I really enjoy is quite multivaried. I'm lucky that the industry has evolved to get to a point, I would say, where you are the sum of your experiences, not just a linear track. And so in a lot of ways, tech has enabled me to be seen for the sum of my experiences, and for that uniqueness to make me great as opposed to a disadvantage. But if I talk it through, you're right. Where I began was not necessarily a precursor to where I've ended up. I am a lawyer by trade. I worked at the Crime and Corruption Commission in Australia for some time. I was also a runner. And at the time when I was running, I injured myself quite badly, and I injured my hip, and I was told that I needed a hip reconstruction if I ever wanted to run again. And I refused to do that and instead got really into yoga and started to see the benefits of yoga for not only rehabilitation, but also in dealing with an insatiable monkey mind. And I actually started then my own yoga business on the side, which really specialized in doing rehab for athletes and optimizing performance with athletes. And I worked with some of the biggest sporting teams in Australia and some of the Australian Olympic teams for a little while. And was doing that at the same time that I was working in the law. I realized that for me, you can't live where you holiday. And yoga was my passion. And when it was also my business, I enjoyed it less. But that what I really enjoyed was solving the problems of how to make a business run. And so I made the tangential step into management consulting, mainly because
it's a huge shift from coming from your background in the law, your experience in owning and operating a business, and you're right. Sometimes you can 100% build your passion into a very, very scalable business. And sometimes it doesn't work for everyone. And good for you for getting and understanding at the difference when it didn't work for you and taking actions otherwise. But that's a major then shift than jumping from law, yoga to management consulting, which is intense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was. And I think what you come to know as a sole operator of a business is there is a difference between working in the business and on the business. And with professional legal training, I knew how to solve problems in a structured way. And having run my yoga business, I knew how to work in it, but I didn't necessarily have the toolkit to know how to work on it in the most effective way. And I was very aware of that. And I think that's where a lot of founders sometimes get a little unstuck, is in finding the binary between the passion of working in it and then having the right skill sets to work on it. And I knew that that was something that I wanted to upskill myself in and believed that I could do. And that's why management consulting was really appealing, because you obviously get to work with some of the biggest companies in the world, solving some of their most complex problems. And the best part about it is that you're doing it in really diverse cross-functional teams of engineers, lawyers, entrepreneurs, just really smart people who are there to solve difficult problems. And I think, to be honest, that was really a real step change for me in realizing what it was that put me in a state of flow, which was solving problems. And management consulting definitely gave me a lot of the toolkits that I was looking at or looking for to understand the fundamentals of how a business ticks, but also the fundamentals of what make me tick, which is solving difficult problems for the first time.
So how did that transcend from going from management consulting, and you were still living in Australia at the time, if I'm correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
To joining truly a technology company, although in the onset it was based on a car service type of structure, right? That then expanded into so many different dynamics. Where did the transition go from management consulting to Uber?
Yeah, so I was actually preparing to go and do my MBA, and a friend of mine reached out and she said she was living in Japan at the time, and she was leading the Japan Uber rides business. And she reached out to me and she said, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but Uber has just launched this initiative, and they're looking for people with a strong kind of finance savvy and strategy background to help set it up. Would you be interested in an introduction? And it occurred to me that at that point in time, really, this was a lightning strikes once opportunity. So that initiative was Uber Eats. And my first job was to work out whether this thing called Uber Eats had any legs, and if so, how to make it profitable and successful. And I was then wearing the twin hats of our strategy and planning function and our strategic finance function, knowing that Uber, this was in 2017. And so knowing that Uber had plans to IPO. And I think from Australia, getting exposure to a true tech unicorn like that is, like I say, a bit of a lightning strikes once opportunity to really work that market through. And so to me, that became my MBA, and I made the jump, which was risky at the time, but probably not that risky because the rides business had been active for some time as well, and so I knew largely what to expect of the company, and it was going through a really interesting step change itself. And then I've been there for the better part of the last 5 years now. So I led our S&P function in Australia, and then I was leading our grocery and convenience delivery business just as COVID hit Australia's shores. In fact, I'll never forget the day because I was flying interstate in Australia, meeting with a state-based office of liquor and gaming regulators. And I met with them during the day, and I got back on the plane to come back into the office on the Friday afternoon, and I got told I couldn't come back into the office. And that was the end of us going into the office. Australia went into lockdown. By the Sunday, we were on calls with the government, working out if lockdown continued, how we were going to bring food to the people of Australia. So it was this incredible kind of cataclysmic moment. And from there, then I started to scale the grocery and convenience offering that we've been working on in Australia globally, because what we had seen as again an initiative or an opportunity actually became a real bona fide need for a lot of people in lockdown. And so it was this period of hyperbolic growth.
Yeah, I think one of the things about business is, I have said over and over again, probably until people, especially anybody who knows me well, is annoyed with it, of opportunity is everywhere. Opportunity is everywhere. And you're right. When opportunity meets need, and what happened is in that shutdown, opportunity met need.
Yeah.
And hence, how a garden grows rapidly and flourishes quickly is in that moment. So that started the impact of Uber Eats in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what about the rest of the world? Now, how did this become a global initiative and you ended up in the States, etc.?
Yeah. So I think what was really fascinating is, it was the intersection, as you say, of needs, wants, and capability. And we operate a three-sided marketplace in which each of those sides of the marketplace were aching for a solution at a really challenging time. And there is, I'm a voracious reader. One of my favorite books is Anna Karenina. And if any of your listeners have read it, the opening line is something like, every happy family is the same, every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And I think the same is often true about certain market dynamics where there is this intersection of fundamental human needs, wants, and capabilities. And so what is true or fundamental about how to scale a direct-to-consumer offering to bring food to people at a time when they are housebound in an unprecedented environment where people are looking for different kinds of earnings opportunities, and how you facilitate them safely. And when merchants are having to fundamentally rethink what their brick and mortar strategy like, the questions that you're trying to solve for become pretty scalable pretty quickly. And so it became abundantly obvious that what we had been doing in Australia could be extensible into other markets. And so what we did is we prioritized a few. There were 5 regions that I sat across from the period of March to November of 2020, and we grew at an extraordinary rate. It was truly extraordinary. And I would have thought that the sort of growth that we had experienced when Uber Eats first launched was again, like I said, a lightning strikes once opportunity, but I was wrong. It was truly incredible to see the team and this new line of business emerge. And then it became clear that there was, a role to continue to do this and to then not only shore up what our grocery offering looked like, but to start to think about what a total new verticals offering looked like and where the extension into new categories and new capabilities would be. And so I moved into this global role. From my bedroom in Sydney, I was operating across Europe, North Asia, and the US. So I was sitting over across almost every major time zone in the world. I won't lie and say that that was easy. It was an incredible rush of adrenaline, and I was there for a good time, not necessarily thinking about the longevity of a long time. Just delighted to be doing something so impactful. But yeah, it was tough. And for, the better part of 18 months, I was more or less nocturnal. And I worked in pretty wild hours, but did some pretty incredible things. And then finally, we were able to get on a plane. We needed government permission ultimately to leave the country. And when we finally were able to, that was about a year ago. So although my role was theoretically based in New York for quite some time, I've actually only been in the US for about a year. And I think that's probably, something that we talked about a little at the outset. And you say
Right.
there's the opportunity, and opportunity is everywhere. I think the willingness to say yes, if you are tethered to your passion, and where your passion is that intersection of what you love and what you're great at, then you really have nothing to be afraid of. Lean in, give it a go, and maybe it'll take you halfway around the world.
Right. And it's so often, and this is a very, very old concept of take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle.
Totally.
The left side is pro, the right side is con, and just start writing. And I think there's a catharsis there. So often we want to do that on a computer, right? We want to do an Excel sheet and do pros and cons. I truly think there's a mental thing that when you actually write it out and see it, like it gets into your body much more than just your brain. And it clearly put you in a position to say yes. The pros outweighs the cons. Yet you're also leaving a country that was one of the strictest during lockdown, that once you come to the States, you can't just decide to go back home. So what, in the basis of your decision-making process, what evaluation did you take yourself through? Was there a family you discussed it with? How did you come to that evolution that this is the next step for you, win or lose?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's one that had to be answered on incomplete information and entirely on gut. But it's also one that can't be made alone. My husband is my best friend. Together, we are each other's biggest supporters, but it ultimately had to be a team decision. And it was I won't lie again, it was very challenging. We left Australia not knowing if or when we would ever be able to go back, and saying goodbye to family, nieces and nephews, grandparents, not knowing when we would be able to see them again, and knowing that life would continue to throw challenges at everyone, and we wouldn't be there. And in turn, they may not be there for us. And that was immensely challenging to mentally get right with, on incomplete information about what the future really looked like and what the rest of the world really looked like when we left Australia's shores. I think ultimately it came back to a question of values, and how my husband and I together as a family unit define what a whole and successful life looks like. And we are very fortunate that we're both very aligned in what our definition of success looks like. And for us, that definition is a life that is truly fulfilled and integrated. And when I say fulfilled, what I really mean is wholehearted and integrated, in the sense that what you say, what you do, and what you think are fundamentally in alignment. And for us to reach that sense of integration and fulfillment is to find the depth and breadth of human experience. And when we thought about the challenges that we willingly wanted to face into, the opportunity for me to solve these big problems on a global stage was truly something that aligned with that North Star of how to find wholeheartedness and fulfillment, and knowing that the bedrock of family and friends and our life in Australia would always be there, but that the opportunity to flex into that breadth and depth of experience would not. And so, win, lose, or draw, we were going to learn. And that learning was going to ultimately fill our cups. We also sort of have this view that together we're a bit of a peloton. And so there will be times when one of us has to break wings for the other, and break ahead for the other. And so, the ability for us to negotiate that is something that I'm really grateful for. And, since we've been in the US, we haven't looked back. We only look forward. But I think, I think as I look forward, I can see a world in which we're back in Australia. I'm really lucky now that the world has opened up. My parents will be in Australia in a couple of months, so it's in the US rather, in a couple of months. So
Nice.
it's the worst that might have happened did not, but certainly the best that could have has, by virtue of coming back to what it is that we were solving for.
Right. And I love the way you describe alignment. And I know, having been married many, many years, and my husband and I each taking different initiatives at different times and supporting one another as a team is so important. And I know one of my strong beliefs is living a life that's fully lived.
Mm-hmm.
Living with no regrets. It doesn't mean doing things that are absurd, stupid, or irresponsible. It does mean stepping into a life with 2 feet and a full heart. So Jessie, what do you see in, other women? Technology is in every industry at this point. As I shared a little bit in the intro to this series, not that long ago, we went to fill this series within the last couple of years, and not a lot of women stepped forward in technology to want to be interviewed. Today, technology is the cornerstone of almost every industry. What do you see as far as women leaders in technology, of where opportunity is, not just today, but tomorrow, for the young people coming forward?
I love how you frame it, that tech is a leading force in industry today. I think even as I was starting my career in tech, it was seen as an adjunct or a complement to retailers or other industries, more traditional channels, and almost like a channel strategy, as opposed to a bedrock that powers a company vision and solves problems at scale. And so even then, the idea that it's moving from a separate vertical to, in fact, a horizontal that beds all industry is something really potent and important. And so I love the way that you frame it on that basis, because I think what that really means is that it is endemic and it is ubiquitous. And that means that the opportunities are everywhere. What I would say, therefore, is don't shy away from it as something to fear or conquer as a vertical. Instead, see it as a composite part of your business literature, in the same way that you need to be able to read a financial statement, in the same way that you need to be able to understand a contract. You should also be able to understand your tech stack, because all those things exist in complement.
By the way, I think that is incredibly well said. For every business leader coming forward from today till forever, to having those skill sets, from a P&L statement to technology to contracts. I'm not an attorney. I'm never going to be an attorney at this point in my life. I do work with an enormous amount of attorneys, and I know when I look at a contract, I'm not a CPA nor a CFO, and I can read a financial statement as a woman leader in business. In the same way, Lord knows anybody who knows me at this point in my life knows I'm not a tech genius. Yet, I recently had a conversation with people looking to put good systems and procedures in place, and one of the areas we looked at was technology. I'm not the expert. They will bring in a CTO, right? But it's being broad in your knowledge base and educated, and knowing the the pulse in business of having the pulse and the knowledge to not necessarily be the expert in the room, but to be knowledgeable enough and not shy away. And I love how you phrase that, not shy away.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. Be broad in your knowledge base and then deepen your execution. Know then at what point you want to choose to be excellent, so that you can truly differentiate yourself, and choose to be excellent again on an intersection of what you're great at and what you really enjoy, because sometimes those two things are not always the same thing, but when you find that real sweet spot, you will be unstoppable. And I think, empower yourself by powering yourself with all the basic competencies, of which tech is just one. But truly own that. I think that's, to me, been one of the most fundamental lessons I've learned on the fly. I think when I started my career, I was constantly waiting to be tapped on the shoulder to say, Jessie, this is the time that you now get entry into the next room, and you've done enough and you know enough, and you take the next step into the next room, up the next staircase. And I realized that your career isn't a staircase, and no one is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, now you're ready. You need to claim that space, and you claim that space by empowering yourself, by powering yourself. And that would be my advice.
And listeners, the person who's going to tap you on the shoulder is going to be yourself. Reach out, reach right, very, very simple. Do this exercise right now. Lift your hand up and tap your shoulder. Okay? Tap your shoulder and say, I'm ready. I'm stepping in. Opportunity is here. You too can run a global initiative, because we're all smart and have the ability to take action. And the belief in ourselves is the key to that. Jessie, quick, you still doing yoga?
I am. Yeah, I do it every day. I'm an addict to it. I just adore it.
I love it. And I so appreciate your story. Back in the day, over 30 years ago, I was told I would never dance again. And even after I reconstructed my knee, so I should reconstruct my knee, and I chose not to, and I chose to be committed to being physically fit and having the strength in my legs to actually be able to do anything I want. So I might not take an advanced ballet class any longer. And I have danced, and I partied the night away this past weekend, dancing away in a pair of sneakers and an ankle brace because I sprained my ankle. And I was just like, they're like, should you be out on the dance floor? And I was like, the music's great. Why wouldn't I be?
I love it.
Thank you for joining us. How can our listeners, viewers, and followers continue to learn more about you, your career, your vision, and connect?
I mean, please look me up on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm a person like anybody else and would love to talk with you.
That is an invitation to actually a beautiful, beautiful thing. How do we learn more? We lean in, see what other people are doing, follow, observe, and reach out when it's appropriate. Listeners, take a moment and say, in our conversation with Jessie today, what did you take away from this call? What was that aha moment? What was that moment that resonated with you? Write that down. Feel free to put it right in the show notes. And then commit to one action you're going to do for yourself from that takeaway and that aha. That's what growth is about. That's what listening to her success story is about. Thank you for joining us here today. And continue, if you want to listen to more of Women Leaders in Technology, we have that going. If you missed a couple of episodes, catch up with them. Stay tuned for the ones coming up next. And know, before you know it, at the end of this year, as in every year, we do a series on leaders in nonprofits. The holiday series is always about giving and taking. How can we give forward to organizations that make a difference? Part of that is about learning from them. Thank you, Jessie, for joining me here today.
Thank you so much.